Hey there. You're listening to True Story No Cap. Real stories, no exaggeration, no lies. Just the raw, unfiltered moments life throws our way. Relax, lean back, and let's get started. Sunlight streamed through the thick curtains, bathing the room in soft light. The day promised to be gentle, the first after a long, gloomy week. Eleanor stretched sweetly under the blanket, opened her eyes, and allowed herself a smile. She turned her head, intending to wake Arthur, but the pillow beside her was empty. From the depths of the apartment, from the kitchen, drifted the intoxicating, incomparable scent of freshly brewed coffee. Morning coffee always seemed magical to her. Arthur was found on the small sofa, engrossed in reading. "Good morning. I don't know. Maybe I just slept well? Or perhaps the anxiety won't let me rest. What's there to be anxious about? Everything will certainly turn out fine." Arthur tried to dispel her worry. Eleanor had a significant reason for her anxiety. Her son was expected today, and not just him. Nicholas had called the day before saying he would arrive this weekend, but not alone. He'd be accompanied. The very fact that their son had a girlfriend was a revelation to his parents. But Nicholas was quick to clarify. She wasn't just a girlfriend, she was his fiancée. Their relationship, he said, was more than serious. For them, it was a complete surprise. They never expected their son, at 21, to want to tie the knot so soon. However, they had no intention of hindering or dissuading him. After all, they themselves had married when they were fifth-year students. Soon, another call came from Nicholas. He reported that he and Catherine were already on their way and would arrive in the city around 5 in the evening. Eleanor had booked a table at a restaurant in advance. Initially, she planned to cook dinner herself, but upon reflection, decided that such an event was significant and they could afford to celebrate it outside the home. Their family belonged to the middle class. They weren't poor, they didn't particularly lack anything, but they didn't allow themselves extravagance either. In recent years, a significant portion of their funds had gone towards Nicholas's university tuition, and his parents were also saving money to buy their son his own apartment. "The kids will be here around 5. Will you meet them?" Eleanor asked her husband. "I need to get my hair done, otherwise it's impossible." "Of course I'll meet them." "Why are you so nervous, honestly? It's not the Queen of England coming to visit." Arthur tried to alleviate her anxiety. But the anxiety didn't leave Eleanor. She didn't know how the first meeting would go, how they would accept their son's chosen one. It seemed there were no reasons for apprehension, but the anxiety only intensified, growing with each passing minute. Closer to 3 o'clock, Eleanor dialed the restaurant number, clarifying the dinner details. Placing the phone on the table, she looked at her reflection in the mirror before which she sat and became lost in thoughts about the rapid passage of time. It seemed like just yesterday Nicholas was taking his first steps, then going to first grade, and now she was waiting for him to visit with his fiancée, and it was very likely that this girl would become his wife, and then there would be children. Her grandchildren. Grandchildren, she repeated aloud, and the thought struck her. What grandchildren? I'm only 43. Eleanor was horrified. I myself, theoretically, can still become a mother, and here I am, a grandmother right away. A sharp phone ring tore her away from these reflections. Nicholas's number flashed again. "Yes, son?" "Hello, this is not your son. This is a paramedic. We're heading to the hospital with your son now." The minibus he was in was involved in a road traffic accident, a stranger's male voice said on the phone. Eleanor couldn't process what she was hearing. What accident? Where were they taking him? What nonsense? Just an hour ago she had spoken to Nicholas and everything was fine. "Madam, can you hear me?" The voice sounded again. "Excuse me, we're taking your son to the Fifth City Hospital. Can you come?" "Who are you?" Her mind refused to accept reality. Where is my Nicholas? "I understand how difficult this is for you right now, but please try to pull yourself together. You need to come to the Fifth Hospital. A blood transfusion might be needed. Please hear me," the voice insisted. "Yes. We'll come now," Eleanor said in a completely lost tone and hung up the phone. She looked in the mirror again, and her own reflection seemed alien, aged by at least 10 years. At that moment, her husband entered the room. "Who are you talking to?" Nicholas called again. "Must miss you a lot, I guess." "Well, never mind, you'll see each other soon. Then you can talk your fill." Arthur Davies smiled, and only then did he notice his wife's face, frozen as if in a stupor. "Arthur, We need to go to the 5th hospital. They're taking him there, Eleanor whispered barely audibly. Who are they taking to the hospital? Nicholas, she repeated just as quietly. Why to the hospital? Arthur couldn't understand anything. Accident? Was all Eleanor could gasp out, suddenly jumping up from the chair. She started pacing the room, snatching clothes from the wardrobe and scattering them on the floor. Ellie, wait, please calm down. I don't understand anything. What happened? He'll need a blood transfusion. She suddenly froze amidst the mess. That means it's bad, doesn't it? Eleanor looked at her husband with a pleading gaze, wanting more than anything in the world to hear that it wasn't true, that it was just a formality, something like that. But Arthur was silent. His face changed sharply. He walked over to his wife, hugged her tightly, and said softly, Pull yourself together. Now, more than ever, you need to gather your strength. We need to go to the hospital. We must find out what's happened to Nicholas. Please, focus. Eleanor looked at her husband and, as if obeying someone else's will, went to get dressed. Chaos reigned in the emergency room. Many people, heart-wrenching cries, gurneys with victims, someone weeping. Medical staff rushed back and forth. Eleanor held tightly onto Arthur's hand, afraid her legs would give way. Do you see Nicholas anywhere? She asked, looking around. No, I don't. We need to ask a nurse. They should know. Arthur replied decisively and headed towards a woman in a white coat who was trying to explain something to a sobbing visitor. Excuse me, please. We received a call saying our son was brought here. Can we find out about his condition? Was he in an accident? The nurse clarified. Yes. Then wait. The doctor will come out and call you. Arthur returned to Eleanor, relaying the nurse's words. But at least half an hour passed, and the doctor still didn't appear. Arthur was about to approach the medical staff again when suddenly a man in a white coat appeared out of nowhere and said loudly, Davies? Yes, that's us, Arthur exclaimed, pulling Eleanor towards the doctor. Come to my office, the doctor said curtly and quickly strode down the corridor. They entered a stern office. Arthur gently seated Eleanor on a chair while he sat on the edge of the couch. Doctor, please tell us what's wrong with Nicholas. Arthur couldn't bear it any longer. I'll be frank, the situation is difficult, the doctor began. Your son was in the front seat of the minibus. The impact was severe. A fracture of the right collarbone, 2 ribs on the right, a crack in the tibia. But these are, in essence, the least of the evils. The doctor paused, looking intently at Eleanor. Is your wife capable of processing information? Go ahead, she seems stunned, Arthur replied. The main problem is a fractured skull base and a severe concussion. We've sent him for an MRI to assess the condition. The greatest danger is potential hematomas. What should we do? How can we help now? Maybe you need money? Name any amount, we'll find it, Arthur asked urgently. No, nothing is needed for now, the doctor replied. The only thing you can and must do now is pray. Everything else is our job. I understand. We'll wait for news, Arthur said quietly, looked at the doctor and added in a choked voice, Save him, please. We're doing everything possible, believe me, the doctor replied. And Catherine? Eleanor suddenly spoke up. There was a girl with him, Catherine, his fiancée. What about her? The doctor shifted his gaze from Arthur to Eleanor. I have no information about any Catherine. You should ask the nurse. Arthur, carefully, as if leading a child, guided Eleanor towards the exit. Her legs barely obeyed her. A passing nurse, noticing her state, offered a sedative injection. Yes, please do it, Arthur agreed. Maybe she'll come to herself a little. After the injection, Eleanor indeed emerged slightly from her stupor. Arthur, did the doctor say when to expect any news? She asked her husband. They said to wait, he replied. We need to find out about Catherine. Yes, of course. The girl probably got hurt too. We must inform her parents, Arthur agreed, and again went to the nurse to inquire about the girl's fate. I'm very sorry. The girl died, the nurse said, looking away. She was the only victim of this accident. I'm sorry. The nurse quickly walked away, as if carrying the blame for what had happened. Arthur was completely stunned. How could he tell Eleanor? She was just starting to recover after the first blow. He went back to the nurse. Excuse me, do you know where she was taken? She must have had a phone. We need to inform her parents somehow. Don't worry, the police will inform everyone, she replied. Yes, of course, Arthur nodded. He returned to Eleanor, who in the meantime had started talking to another woman. Her husband was also in that minibus, injured, but not as severely. Did you find out about Catherine? Eleanor turned to Arthur as he approached. He just shook his head negatively. What? She wasn't brought here? Arthur looked at his wife, not daring to utter the terrible words. No, she was taken to the 9th, the woman quickly said. The injured were separated, some here, some there. Arthur breathed a sigh of relief. He would tell Eleanor about Catherine, but not now. Not now. Around 10 in the evening, the doctor appeared again and called Arthur. His appearance didn't bode well. Arthur immediately understood there would be no good news. I have bad news, the doctor began. Arthur tried to read the name on the badge, but the letters blurred before his eyes, preventing him from focusing. Doctor, please, tell me directly what's wrong with my son. This uncertainty and waiting are the most agonizing. He's alive. Yes, he's alive, the doctor hastened to assure him, but he has a very severe traumatic brain injury. And now what? Is it treatable? You see, at the moment we are powerless to do anything. The situation is extremely atypical. Surgery is too risky, he might not survive it. The only thing we can do now is support his vital functions. How long do we wait? At least a couple of days. Then we'll monitor the dynamics. And what should we do? Go home? Arthur asked. They won't let you see him now anyway, the doctor replied. Try to calm your wife, she needs rest. Come back tomorrow around 11, there's no point in coming earlier. Okay, I understand. Thank you, Arthur said. He had great difficulty persuading Eleanor to go home. She categorically refused to leave the hospital. What if he gets worse and we're not here? She asked desperately. Listen, we can't help him in any way, Arthur argued. The doctors are here, they're controlling everything, and you need to rest, at least a little. Please don't argue, let's go home. We'll come back tomorrow, the doctor said around 11. 3 long weeks passed. During this time, there was no more clarity. Nicholas remained in an extremely serious condition, in an induced coma. Eleanor was deeply distressed by the news of Catherine's death. The thought of how she would tell her son about it when he woke up was unbearable. Today, Eleanor arrived at the hospital to see her son only closer to lunchtime. She had been urgently called into work. She was a designer at a small firm. Having taken a month's leave of absence from her superiors, the situation demanded it. Strangely, Eleanor remained confident that Nicholas would soon recover, and then he would need her constant care and attention. However, Nicholas's attending physician, Dr. Robert Miller, merely threw up his hands, repeating that they had to wait. What exactly they had to wait for, the parents didn't understand. Their son lay as if frozen, and it seemed nothing was happening. Eleanor knocked resolutely on Dr. Robert Miller's office door. May I come in? She asked, opening the door slightly. Yes, of course, come in, the doctor replied. He rose from his desk and sat on the sofa, inviting Eleanor to sit beside him. Dr. Miller, we need to talk seriously, Eleanor began. Tell me honestly, what should we do? What are Nicholas's prospects? We can't just sit and wait, doing nothing. You must understand me. I understand your despair, but for now I can't offer anything specific, the doctor replied. We are not a major city clinic, unfortunately, and no one will allow your son to be transported such a distance in this condition. I understand that too, Eleanor agreed. But how long do we wait? And for what? Does my son have any chance of coming out of this state anytime soon? Eleanor, I cannot guarantee or promise anything, Dr. Miller said. Understand medicine, although a precise science, also has room for the inexplicable, for a miracle, if you will. And I believe in this miracle because with our medical means, we are currently powerless. Can I visit him? Eleanor asked. Of course you can. Why do you ask? The doctor replied. Eleanor left the office and headed to her son's ward. Nicholas lay motionless, just as he had yesterday, as he had a week ago. Eleanor sat down beside him, gently taking his hand. Images from the past swam before her eyes. Little Nicky, their trip to the dolphinarium, where he swam with dolphins. His victory in the swimming competition, first place in the region. She desperately wanted to cry, but there were no tears left. In these 3 terrible weeks, she had cried out everything she could. At that moment, despair overwhelmed her. Wild, all-consuming, impossible to fight. Her hands trembled, her legs felt like cotton, Dark circles swam before her eyes. It seemed like a little more, and she would lose consciousness. Eleanor sharply rose from the chair and almost fell, but managed to grab the edge of the bed and sat down again. Something must be done, a thought echoed in her head. But what? The unhappy mother didn't know whom to turn to, where to run. Leaving the hospital gates, she slowly shuffled towards home. Suddenly, she desperately craved coffee. The intoxicating aroma wafted down the street from the nearest coffee shop. She resolutely turned into it. Entering, Eleanor saw that all the tables were occupied by couples, which caused slight disappointment. Just as she was about to leave, she noticed a lone man in the far corner. I don't think I'll disturb him much if I drink a cup of coffee in 10 minutes and leave, Eleanor thought, and confidently headed towards his table. Excuse me, is this seat taken? She asked the man, who was bent over some papers. May I sit down for a moment? I'll just have a coffee and leave right away. The man raised his head, turned, and nearly dropped his documents in surprise. Ellie? Eleanor looked at him in complete bewilderment. How does he know me? The thought flashed through her mind. Excuse me, do we know each other? She clarified. Ellie, don't you recognize me? The man smiled. Eleanor began to look closely. He looked about 40 or 45. Solid, expensive glasses, thick dark hair with barely noticeable gray. Dressed impeccably, very expensively. Among her acquaintances and friends, there was no one of such wealth. Maybe a former client? Eleanor thought and said aloud, I'm sorry, no. Did you perhaps order a design project from us? No, the man smiled, and Eleanor involuntarily noted his perfectly straight, snow-white teeth. Come on, sit down, sit down. Eleanor sat down, as if stunned. It was awkward that she didn't recognize this man. So, how do you know me? We studied together at university, but I was a year ahead. Paul Grant, don't you remember? Polly? Eleanor's surprise was boundless. I would never have recognized you, honestly. I've probably changed, Paul smiled, hopefully for the better. Of course, I'm so happy to see you. And how did you end up in our neck of the woods? Didn't you transfer and leave? Yes, I left, and I came here on company business. I decided to walk around the old places, have a good coffee, remember my student years, and look through some papers at the same time. And then this meeting. Fate, probably. An incredible, bright energy emanated from him. Even in her depressed state, Eleanor felt it. Paul noticed her mood. Did something happen to you? You look very upset. Oh, Polly. Better not ask. And Eleanor, quite unexpectedly for herself, suddenly burst into tears, loudly and bitterly. Can I help in any way? The old acquaintance asked. No, Polly, no one can help now. Only a miracle or higher powers. Something like this has happened to me. And Eleanor, as if a dam had broken, told Paul everything that had happened in the last month. To her surprise, it was incredibly easy to talk to him. The tears dried up. She spoke completely calmly. It was strange. Eleanor, unaccustomed to pouring out her soul, was sharing her sorrow with a person who had essentially become a stranger. Yes, they had studied together once, perhaps even been friends. But so many years had passed that it seemed like it was in another life. Usually, such meetings are limited to general phrases and polite questions. Paul listened with extreme attention, never interrupting. And only when Eleanor finished did he ask a completely unexpected question. Ellie, does Nicholas have a father? Eleanor looked at him in surprise. Yes, of course. Why? Do you live together? Paul continued his strange questioning. Yes, we're married. Why are you asking? It just always seemed to me that a father should fight for his child until his last breath. And where is your husband? Why are you alone in such a state wandering around the city? I noticed how depressed you were right away. He's at work, Eleanor replied quietly and bitterly. There were no more words. At that moment, she felt agonizing pain. She had asked herself these questions many times and had been sure that Arthur would be her support in finding a way out. But he seemed to have withdrawn, saying he was powerless. She felt ashamed. Ashamed to admit that in 23 years of marriage, her husband had never made a serious independent decision, never shown initiative. Eleanor had always and everywhere acted, decided, achieved, and she was mortally tired of it. In the first years after the wedding, she hoped Arthur would change, attributing it to youth. Time passed, Nicholas arrived, and for several years she stopped noticing his indecisiveness and spinelessness, but over time, these traits became more and more apparent and distinct. They argued, Eleanor tried to influence him, but it was all in vain, and she simply resigned herself. But now his inaction and unwillingness to fight were simply killing her. Eleanor understood. She would have to do everything herself again, otherwise no one would save Nicholas. Ellie, don't despair, Paul said. I believe your Nicholas will definitely recover. Where did you say this wonderful Elias lives? Eleanor named the village. I don't know which region it's in yet, but they should tell me this evening how to get there. All right, calm down. We won't wait until evening, Paul said confidently, taking out his phone. Gary, find out which region the village line is in and call me back in a couple of minutes. Paul's phone rang, and a certain Gary quickly provided all the necessary information. Eleanor looked at Paul as if mesmerized. Tell me, can you arrange your absence from work for a couple of days by phone so we don't waste time and leave right now? I'm on vacation starting today, Eleanor said slowly, almost in a whisper. She looked at him with such astonishment that it took her breath away. But I need to pack at least some things for the trip. What things? We'll buy everything necessary on the way, Paul replied clearly, in a businesslike manner. Look, if we leave immediately, we'll be there by midnight. Although, no, right now. So, first he put on a show, and now he's backing down, Eleanor thought bitterly. Polly, I understand everything. You have your own business. I'll get there myself by train or bus. Transport runs. You've already helped a lot by finding out the region. Thank you. No, not right now, Paul smiled. We haven't finished our coffee yet. You'll finish it. You're something, she smiled back. What about your business? Ellie, my dear, my business can wait, Paul said seriously. I have employees who work. My job is to keep my finger on the pulse, to be in touch. Don't worry about that. Finish your coffee calmly and we'll go. They finished their coffee and left the coffee shop. When Paul approached his car, Eleanor was surprised for the second time. Before her stood a luxurious business-class car. Even if we sold our apartment and car, it wouldn't be enough for this. The thought somehow crossed her mind. Please. Paul opened the front passenger door, inviting Eleanor to get in. Thank you. You have a very beautiful car, she said. Yes, I like it too. He smiled back. Wait, don't you need to call anyone, inform them you've left? Eleanor asked. No, I don't. And you, your parents? Dad passed away a year ago and Mom shortly after, Eleanor replied quietly. So, besides my husband and son, I have no close relatives. Although, you can't exactly call my husband close right now, especially now. I'm sorry. My condolences about your parents, Paul said sincerely. It's all right, I've already gotten through it, Eleanor replied. Though, of course, it's very hard without parental support. I understand, Paul said. My parents also passed away one after another 7 years ago. First Mom, then Dad, 6 months later. It's very painful. Yes. Eleanor sighed, looking somewhere into the distance. They drove in silence for about 10 minutes. Each was thinking their own thoughts. But Eleanor was sure that Paul, like her, was remembering his parents now. This wound, it seemed, would never heal. Around 11 in the evening, they entered a small town near the required village. Paul suggested stopping for the night there, deciding that going to the village so late would be inappropriate. They found a small, cozy hotel and rented 2 adjacent single rooms. Are you hungry? Paul asked. I don't even know. Sort of, but not very. Then let's have a glass of wine, a light salad, and go to sleep. We need to get up early tomorrow. Yes, I agree. Wine will probably help me relax and fall asleep. All right, then go up to your room. I'll be there soon. Paul returned about 40 minutes later. Eleanor had managed to shower and change into a soft hotel robe. I found out everything about this Elias, he began. The receptionist turned out to be very talkative. You need to go to him at 8 in the morning. He doesn't receive earlier. But you absolutely must get there before sunset. He doesn't receive after that either. So I suggest we be there by 7. There's sure to be a queue. People come to him not only from all over the country, but also from neighboring countries. It's not guaranteed we'll get in tomorrow on the first try, The receptionist said some people wait for 3 or 4 days. Wow, Eleanor gasped. I hope we haven't come for nothing and he can help Nicholas. There was a knock at the door, and a young man of about 19 entered the room with a tray laden with food. He carefully placed it on the table, wished them a pleasant meal and rest, and left. After the light dinner, the conversation continued, but Eleanor suddenly looked at her phone. 0:05, 1 in the morning. Arthur hadn't called once. Does he really not care at all? She thought bitterly. She was almost dozing off when a notification signal sounded. Eleanor picked up her phone and read, Have you no conscience? Do you see what time it is? Is this your revenge? She wanted to reply but changed her mind. Turning off the sound, she turned onto her other side and fell asleep. At 6 in the morning, they arrived at Elias's house. He appeared on the doorstep almost immediately, carrying a small suitcase. Approaching the car, the healer greeted them and nimbly climbed into the back seat. Perhaps you'd like to sit in the front? I can give you my seat, Eleanor offered. Thank you, no need, Elias replied. I'm not used to taking someone else's place, and this place is yours. A wife should always be next to her husband. But we're not husband and wife, Eleanor objected. This is Elias. Paul looked at Elias, then at Eleanor, and just smiled. He liked this unusual man more and more. They only reached the hospital where Nicholas was being treated by 5 in the evening. Fortunately, Dr. Robert Miller was there and immediately received Eleanor in his office. Good afternoon, Eleanor began, barely crossing the threshold. I've brought this amazing man, and I urgently request that he examine Nicholas right now. Then let's go to the ward, Dr. Robert Miller said. Eleanor, Elias, and Dr. Robert Miller entered the ward. Nicholas lay motionless, in the same position as always. Elias immediately went to the bed, signaling with his hand for them to stay by the door. Approaching the young man, he simply looked at him for a few minutes, then took his hand and placed his palm on it. To Eleanor, it felt like an eternity, at least an hour. In reality, no more than 5 minutes passed. Leave me alone with the young man for about 40 minutes, Elias requested. What are you going to do? The doctor asked. Don't worry, nothing dangerous or supernatural. I just need to be alone with him, please. Eleanor intervened in the conversation. Dr. Miller, let's step out. Let Elias be with my son. As a mother, I don't object. Yes, of course, the doctor agreed. It probably won't get any worse. Those 40 minutes stretched endlessly, becoming the longest of her life. It felt like an eternity had passed. The waiting was simply unbearable. It's not for nothing, they say. It's better to chase than to wait. Inaction and complete lack of understanding of what was happening behind the door completely threw her off balance. Finally, the ward door opened and Elias appeared on the threshold. He looked strikingly changed, as if he had aged before their eyes. Eleanor looked at the healer in a daze. What happened in there that he looks like that? The thought flashed through her mind, but aloud she asked, looking at him pleadingly, Tell me, does he have even a tiny chance of pulling through? Dr. Robert Miller also asked hopefully, Well, does the young man have a chance? He will be fine, Elias said confidently. I need a place in your hospital for 3 days. Can you arrange it, or will I have to break something myself for that? He asked the doctor. I think we can figure something out, don't worry, Dr. Robert Miller replied. And are you sure of your conclusion? Can he really recover? Not can, but will recover, Elias said firmly. He'll be on the mend very soon. Dr. Robert Miller went to find a place for Elias. Elias looked Eleanor directly in the eyes. Why are you looking like that? I said everything will be fine. So, here's the plan. You go home now, shower, and go to sleep. Tomorrow, please, don't come here. Your help won't be needed. But the day after tomorrow, you need to be at the hospital no later than... He paused for a moment, calculating something. No later than 11. Of course, I can be here at 7. Eleanor quickly agreed. Did I say 7? No. Come by 9. That will be the most suitable time. I'll come. I'll definitely come. Thank you. From the bottom of my weary soul, Eleanor whispered. She had already moved away from Elias, heading towards the exit, when she heard his voice. Soon your soul will sing, not suffer, you'll see, he said meaningfully. But Eleanor didn't believe it. Paul patiently waited for Eleanor at the hospital entrance. Well, what did he say? Paul asked with sincere concern. He said he can help. He needs 3 days. He told me not to come tomorrow, but to come the day after tomorrow by 9 in the morning. My God, how will you get through these day and a half? Paul sympathized. Honestly, I have no idea, Eleanor replied. Are you going home already? Or maybe you'll stay at the hotel and leave tomorrow morning? What do you mean, leave tomorrow morning? Paul was surprised. Will I leave you alone in this state? Who do you take me for? But you've already spent so much time on me, I feel awkward, Eleanor confessed honestly. That was hurtful just now. Paul feigned a frown. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, but... Eleanor looked away. Can I stay at your hotel tonight? I don't want to go home. Of course you can. What kind of questions are those? Only I'm terribly hungry. Let's go quickly, Paul smiled. They got into the car and drove to the hotel. It turned out to be quite close, a 10-minute drive from the hospital. Paul rented 2 adjacent rooms and ordered dinner delivered to the room. In the room, is that all right with you? He asked Eleanor. Can I ask a question in return? Eleanor asked, slightly embarrassed. Of course you can. I'll take a shower and be in a robe. I don't have the strength to be in these clothes anymore. Of course you can. Do what's comfortable for you. Everything is fine. When Eleanor came out of the shower, the table was already set. Paul had ordered so much food it would have been enough for 10 people. I think I overdid it, he smiled. You're just hungry, Eleanor replied. That often happens when you're really hungry. It's okay. We'll try the most delicious things. They talked until almost 2 in the morning, despite being terribly tired, more emotionally than physically. Eleanor didn't feel like sleeping at all. In Paul's company, she felt surprisingly calm and at ease. They talked about trifles, recalled funny stories from their lives. Paul saw how worried Eleanor was about her son and tried his best to distract her from heavy thoughts. He admired the resilience of this seemingly fragile woman. Not every man is capable of bearing the blows of fate so courageously, and here was a woman. Although from his own experience Paul knew women are much stronger and more resilient than men, and who came up with calling them the weaker sex, he sincerely didn't understand. Eleanor fell asleep right in Paul's room. He felt sorry about waking the woman he loved and gently carried her to his bed, settling himself on the small sofa. In the morning they went to the hospital to see Nicholas. They arrived exactly at 9 as Elias had instructed. Dr. Robert Miller met them at the entrance to the department. Seeing him, Eleanor was frightened. What if something had happened during these days? And immediately reproached herself for allowing herself to relax. What? What happened? She rushed to the doctor. Calm down, Eleanor. Everything is fine, he replied. Even better. Nicholas has regained consciousness. How? Regained consciousness in less than 2 days? Eleanor couldn't believe it. Can I see him? Does he understand where he is and what happened? Don't worry, he's fine, especially his head, the doctor assured her. You can see him. He's waiting for you. Eleanor didn't walk. She flew into Nicholas's ward. Her son was sitting on the bed, and next to him on a chair sat Elias. Son, Nicholas, my darling. She rushed to him, hugging and kissing him, unable to believe her eyes. How are you? Can you talk? Mom, don't worry, I'm fine, Nicholas replied. I'll be completely recovered soon. Elias! Eleanor wanted to rush to him and kiss him, but restrained herself. Instead, she knelt before him, beginning to thank him profusely. Elias, clearly not expecting this, quickly helped Eleanor up from the floor and seated her on a chair. Eleanor, please stop, honestly. You're embarrassing me. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my son. Tell me, how much do I owe you? I completely forgot to ask about the amount. Listen, you need to calm down a little, Elias said. I'll step out now and leave you alone with Nicholas. He needs to tell you something important, and then we'll talk. Agreed? Yes, of course, Eleanor agreed. Son, what do you need to tell me? Something bad? Mommy, come on, I told you everything is fine. Nicholas smiled. Listen, just don't worry and don't be scared. When I was in a coma, Catherine came to me. He saw that his mother was about to say something and quickly continued, not letting her get a word in. Yes, I know she died. Don't interrupt. She asked that when you have a daughter, you name her Kate, in memory of Catherine. Her passport name was Catherine, and she was baptized as Catherine, you understand? Eleanor didn't understand anything at all. For a moment, it even seemed to her that something was wrong with her son's head. Son, does your head hurt? No, Mommy, my head is fine, Nicholas replied. Just promise me you'll name your sister Kate, please. It's very important for her and for me. But I'm not planning on having a baby. I'm 43, you know, Eleanor objected. You're not planning to, but you will, Nicholas remarked calmly. I don't understand anything. And one more thing. I know you and Dad are getting divorced. So you don't worry. I'll tell you right away. I'm not against it. I'm on your side. Eleanor looked at Nicholas stunned. He had always loved his father and almost always took his side. What had happened? Where did such changes come from? What could have caused this? To Eleanor, it all seemed like a dream. Nicholas, what about Dad? You always said you wouldn't forgive us if we divorced. Mom, that was when I was a child, Nicholas replied. I've grown up and now I see things differently. I know Dad never came to my ward while I was in a coma. I know everything he did and said. And I know what you did. I saw and heard everything. Mommy, I ask you, be happy. Truly, as a woman. I won't stop communicating with Dad. He's my father, and I owe him a lot. But I want you to be happy because I love you. And now I know it for sure. Eleanor was crying again. The tears were no longer from sorrow, but from the overwhelming feelings. Hearing such words from her own son, her grown son, who had seemingly returned from the other side, was incredibly touching and moving. Eleanor hugged Nicholas, kissed him on the cheek. Son, I love you very much. Very much. Thank you so much for those words. We'll get through this. Dr. Robert Miller entered the ward and announced that Nicholas was being taken for an MRI. The results of the examination astonished even seasoned doctors. The hematomas in Nicholas's head had seemingly vanished. The fractures had almost healed. Now only rehabilitation was required, no surgical intervention. You know, Elias, I've seen a lot in my lifetime, but this, Dr. Robert Miller said to the healer, I don't even know how to explain this from a medical standpoint. I only have one question. If I have more patients in my practice who are hopeless from our point of view, can I refer them to you? You can, Elias replied. I help everyone I can. But it's not always possible. Sometimes a person cannot recover because they themselves don't wish it. Then no one can help. Eleanor stood a little distance away, patiently waiting for their conversation to end. Elias stepped away from the doctor and looked intently at the woman. Do you want to ask something? He asked, smiling. No, Eleanor lied. Although in reality she very much wanted to ask about the pregnancy Nicholas had mentioned. But I think you're being sly, Elias said. You wanted to thank me for saving your son? And ask how much you owe me? Elias's face changed slightly. He shook his head reproachfully. Do you think everything is always measured in money? No, of course not. Eleanor felt awkward, like a guilty schoolgirl. What did money do? Where would you take it to give to God? Well, that's different, Eleanor mumbled. No, it's not different, Elias replied quietly. I am merely a messenger, doing his work with my hands. He is just a little behind schedule. He smiled sadly. Are you sure you don't want to ask anything else? Eleanor shifted hesitantly from foot to foot, thinking, but finally decided, I do. Tell me, am I doing the right thing by leaving my husband behind? What do you think yourself? How do you feel? What do you want? Elias asked. I want to be happy, and for that I need a different man, not my husband. You see, you know everything yourself, Elias smiled. Why are you asking me then? And one more thing. Eleanor wanted to sink through the floor. Asking a stranger about pregnancy at 43 seemed the height of indecency and absurdity, but she decided, Tell me, can I still get pregnant? No, Elias replied honestly and directly. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. I wish I hadn't asked, she thought bitterly. At least there would have been some hope. You cannot get pregnant because you are already pregnant, Elias smiled. You always get upset before listening to the end. Wait, how? Already? So, is this Arthur's baby, my husband's? Eleanor exclaimed. No, no. Elias shook his head. This is the child of the man you came here with, your destined one. But that was just recently and you're already sure I'm pregnant? Eleanor was stunned. Does that happen? It happens, Elias replied. When people are destined to be together, they sometimes waste their lives on foolishness instead of being happy. In such cases, Fate uses any, even the slightest chance to bring them together. Unbelievable, was all Eleanor could utter. Thank you so much. We'll take you home, she offered. No need, Elias replied. Take me to the train station, please. I have another journey since I'm in Russia. And take care of yourself and your family. That's the most important thing in life. Paul took Elias to the station and returned to the hospital. In the meantime, Eleanor spoke with Dr. Robert Miller and learned with amazement that Nicholas could be discharged home early next week. However, he would need to follow a regimen and perform a set of exercises for faster recovery. Eleanor went into her son's ward. Nicholas was sitting by the window looking somewhere into the distance. Son, what's wrong? His mother asked, frightened. Nothing, Mommy. Everything's fine, Nicholas replied. I'm just sitting here thinking things like this happen in life. I was dying, almost died, and resurrected. If it weren't for you, where did you even find this Elias? Eleanor told him how she had learned about the healer and how she had gone to get him. Well, you certainly know how to surprise me, Mommy. Nicholas smiled. Nicholas, I'm going out for a little while, and I'll come back tomorrow morning, okay? Eleanor said. I really need to talk to someone, to Paul. Did I say his name? Nicholas asked. No, but I know. Eleanor replied. Go, of course. I want to sleep. I'm very tired. Nicholas kissed his mother goodbye and lay down in bed, while Eleanor hurried to Paul. She kept thinking about how to tell him the news. And whether she should tell him now? Maybe she should be sure first? What if Elias was mistaken? Paul was standing by the car, talking on the phone. Gary, this needs to be done urgently. I can't live like this anymore after all. Yes, we'll transfer. It's not a big deal. Yes, I understand there will be complications. Maybe. I'll definitely talk to her. Of course, all right, stay in touch. Paul turned and saw Eleanor approaching. Hi. Can you talk? They blurted out simultaneously in one breath and laughed. You go first, Paul offered. I'll yield to the woman I love. It's her right. Polly, just not here, Eleanor asked. This place is completely unsuitable. All right, then let's go, have dinner, and talk. It's going to be a long conversation. It requires attention and calmness. You're scaring me, Eleanor tensed. Don't worry, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. Sitting at a table in the restaurant, Eleanor still couldn't bring herself to start. Doubts about the correctness of such a step overwhelmed her, but Paul watched attentively, waiting. Ellie, of course, I'm a patient man, and I've been waiting for you for over 20 years, he smiled. But let's speed up the process a bit. What did you want to say? Eleanor found nothing better than simply recounting their conversation with Elias that day. Paul listened, looking at her, and seemed not to understand immediately. You mean I'm going to have a child? A real one? Eleanor laughed. Of course a real one. What else? And most likely a girl. Daddy's little princess. It can't be. It can't be, Paul repeated, and tears streamed from his eyes. Eleanor hadn't expected this at all. A solid adult man was crying like a child. Polly, what's wrong? Don't. She rushed to comfort him. You don't understand what this news means to me, Paul said through tears. I dreamed of a child so much. I always wanted one, especially a daughter. But from the woman I love, I had almost lost hope. The only hope left was to be with you, to win you over, to charm you. It doesn't matter. But the fact that you will give me a daughter, today is the happiest day of my life. Eleanor was crying too. It was incredibly touching. It reached the very soul. Having composed himself, Paul continued, So I made the right decision. Now I'm absolutely sure of it. He looked at Eleanor. Ellie, my darling, your divorce is just a matter of time. I know for sure that now you are only mine and I won't give you up to anyone. But we need to decide one important point. Where will we live? What are the options? Eleanor smiled. She was already mentally preparing herself for Paul to suggest she move to his city. Look, Paul said, we can buy a house in Yubileny Village, or a large duplex apartment on Pushkinskaya Street. Which option do you prefer? Paul named 2 elite areas of her hometown. Eleanor was completely unprepared for him to be willing to move here. Wait, Eleanor exclaimed. So you're ready to move to the city for me and abandon your business? No one is going to abandon the business, Paul replied. We need something to live on, and I'm ready to move anywhere for you. Polly, Is the option of staying in your city not suitable for us? Eleanor asked cautiously. It is suitable, of course, but I just thought. Paul looked at her in surprise. And you? Would you agree to move to my city for me? Polly, I was married and carried everything on my shoulders for over 20 years, Eleanor said. I want to feel married, to be a wife supported by her husband, not the other way around. I'm ready to go anywhere with you, even to Siberia. Paul couldn't contain himself. He jumped up, lifted Eleanor into his arms, and exclaimed to the entire restaurant, Ladies and gentlemen, I have the best woman in the world, and I love her, and she's going to give me a daughter. The people in the hall burst into thunderous applause. Someone shouted, Well done! Someone else, Congratulations! Eleanor blushed. Put me down, please. You're embarrassing me, she whispered. You are my happiness, Paul replied softly. A week later, Nicholas was discharged from the hospital, and the three of them moved to Paul's city. He had a large house. There was enough room for everyone. Nicholas decided to transfer to a local university to finish his studies there and live with his mother and stepfather. To Eleanor's great surprise, Nicholas and Paul quickly found common ground, often going fishing together. Eleanor couldn't have imagined how drastically her life would change, that she would decide to become a mother for the second time, and that she would finally feel truly married, simply a happy woman. And she certainly didn't expect to meet the man she had been secretly in love with back in university after so many years, but she would tell him about that another time.